with the issues and leaders shaping our state and nation. Events like tonight provide an important opportunity to listen, learn, ask questions, and become better informed citizens. Regardless of background or perspective, we all share a common interest in the future of our great state of South Carolina and the leaders who will help guide us. We are excited to hear from the candidates on stage tonight and to learn more about their vision for serving the people of South Carolina. This state means so much to our university community. In fact, nearly 80% of our graduates are from South Carolina, and the vast majority of them remain here after graduation to work, raise families, lead businesses, serve in churches, nonprofits, and government, and invest in their communities. As our state motto reminds us, while I breathe, I hope. This spirit of hope continues to inspire us as we pray for and invest in the future of our state and its people. Thank you again for joining us tonight, for participating in this important conversation, and for being here on the beautiful campus of Charleston Southern University. We are grateful to host you, and we hope you enjoy and learn from tonight's discussion. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Jeff Taylor, Executive Editor of the Post and Courier.
Thank you, Dr. Wilder. We appreciate that. Thank you to Charleston Southern University for hosting us tonight. We appreciate that. On behalf of the Post and Courier, I'm pleased to welcome you to the Palmetto Politics Live Gubernatorial Forum, which is co-sponsored by AARP South Carolina. We invited all of the Republican and Democrats who are running for governor to participate tonight. All but one committed to being here, and unfortunately, 4 of them withdrew at the last moment. But we thank the candidates who are here and kept their commitment to appearing before you to share their positions and views. They are, in alphabetical order, State Representative Jermaine Johnson, State Senators Josh Kimbrell, U.S. Representative Ralph Norman, and businessman Billy Webster. Before we get started, I would like to introduce AARP South Carolina's State Director, Charmaine Fuller Cooper, to share some remarks.
Closet at this beautiful university, I heard someone come in and say, well, ask about AARP, and I heard the reply go, oh, well, they send you this little magazine. So, I know who you are. No, just kidding. But I want to tell you a little bit about AARP. So just under 70 years ago, AARP started as the National Retired Teachers Association. But before we became the National Retired Teachers Association, a fiery redhead who was a retired principal in the state of California, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrews, was inspired because she went to visit another former educator. When she found this educator, she was crawling out of a chicken coop because that's all that she could afford on her small pension. And that's right, I said she was crawling out of a chicken coop. Things have not changed that much. Even with our smart houses and our wonderful devices, we still find people who even come into South Carolina for a more affordable cost of living are really struggling with the cost of housing, the cost of transportation, basic expenses, utilities. And for those who come with a little bit, they're also struggling to just keep what they have as consumer protection issues continue to rise and we see more people losing their money to scams. So tonight we are so delighted to be here with our candidates for the office of governor, the highest office in our state, to hear what policies and positions they will promote if they are so fortunate to become our next governor. So thank you and welcome.
Just a couple of other things to let you know about. This is a forum, so it's not like a traditional debate. The Post and Courier's politics editor, Schuyler Kropf, will direct questions to the candidates, and I will serve as moderator. So thank you, Schuyler. The same questions will be posed to each candidate. The questions were not shared with them in advance. The candidates will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question, and each will be given 90 seconds for closing comments at the end. We will start the questions with Representative Norman. He was the lucky guy in the drawing we had in the back, just to make it fair. We will rotate the questions among the candidates, giving each of them the chance to be the first to answer a question. I will monitor time to ensure we stay within the allotted time for responses. And to the members of the audience, you don't look like a rough crowd, but I will tell you, please do not applaud during or after candidates' remarks or disrupt them as they're speaking. We want to maintain a neutral forum. We anticipate ending a little sooner than we had planned, but we're really happy that you all braved the rain and got here. It wasn't our ideal day to end the drought, but we appreciate everyone being here tonight. So, Schuyler, let's begin.
I guess we're going to start with Congressman Norman. This spring, the referendums we've seen across the country have been pretty much run and controlled in the wishes of President Trump. He's not waiting on this race yet, but why do you believe, and also for Senator Kimball, you are worthy of an endorsement from President Trump if you were to give one in this race? And for the Democrats, if elected, how do you see yourself working with a hostile White House against your party?
First of all, I want to thank each of you for coming out in the rain and braving the traffic. Every candidate should be here. You know, it starts with knowing about what we all stand for. And not having all the candidates here is really unacceptable, particularly not fair to y'all to cancel the last minute. Like President Trump, I am a businessman of 40 years. I got into politics after my children were grown. I was in the real estate business. You like endorsements to come your way, particularly when you philosophically align with a person. What the president's doing for the country is great, in my opinion. He's taking a stagnant economy. He's producing oil. He's doing all the things that to get us back on track. But mainly, he's closed the border, and he's done things that are really saving America, and particularly South Carolina, because we've got a number of people that are coming to this area, and South Carolina's got to be protected. But to me, I want to run the state like a business, and I've got a solid business career. I've got a solid record of conservatism, and I will carry that to the governorship, which is the most important election, because you elected somebody 4 years, but I would say 8 years. We got to get it right. That's why everybody should have been here. Thank you for the question.
Next we go to...
I do not expect to receive President Trump's endorsement. I've spent my entire life finding common ground, building bridges, and doing things. I cut my teeth on the politics of our former two-term governor, Dick Riley. There was no man who was more capable of working across the aisle than he was. We passed a 1-cent sales tax while he was governor with Republican support, the business community, faith leaders, and other folks who cared about education in South Carolina. I also worked in the White House with Bill Clinton. It was during the days, Ralph, you'll remember the Contract for America. Newt Gingrich would stand on the Capitol steps and harangue Bill Clinton. And after it was all over, Clinton would say to me, "Billy, get Newt over here for dinner." And out of that partnership came the last 2 balanced budgets that this country has had. It came the CHIPS program for children's health, welfare reform, and we ended a brutal war in Bosnia and Kosovo. Working across the aisle is what I've done my whole life. In business, as chairman of the board of the Hatcher Conservancy, chairman of the board of Prisma Health, the largest hospital system in the state, and throughout my life, it's the way you get things done. You have to work together. We will work together to move the state forward.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you so much. Looking at the current administration, it's not like what we've seen traditionally in the past. So working with a Trump administration would not be the same as working with a George Bush or somebody else type of administration, because we're seeing the hostility that's happening all across this country when it comes to retribution if you don't agree with what the president currently says.
But I truly believe that if Mayor Mondani can have a meeting with Donald Trump
and find common ground, then Governor Jermaine Johnson can do the same. And I think that's what we have to do, is we have to be willing to go anywhere and talk to anybody to have that relationship, to form that relationship. I've got one picture on my wall in my office at home with me and another politician, and that's me and Ralph Norman right here. That's the only picture I have on my wall. So everybody knows that I can build common ground with anybody and everybody. I don't mind going across the hall to go work with my senator over here and to make sure we can get the things done that have to be done for the people of South Carolina.
I'm going to break policy. Can you tell us the backstory on that picture?
Yeah, we were in Kershaw County together, and we wanted to take a picture together. He sent me this picture from Washington, D.C. Himself. He wrote on it and talked about my future in politics and the things like that. But everybody who knows me in South Carolina, they know I can get along with anybody and everybody, and that's the type of relationship I have with everybody in South Carolina.
All right, Senator Kimbrell.
Well, thank you. And I'd start off by saying, yes, Representative Johnson is not to the left of Mondani. I've worked with him, so we can work together. And in seriousness, I always enjoyed working with you. That's been a great thing of us in the House and the Senate. Look, I haven't said, I've not requested the endorsement. I've certainly done in the legislature what I think is right. Most of what I've supported and fought for, I think the president has agreed with me on, or I've agreed with him on. We've cut taxes significantly in the 6 years I've been in the Senate, with property taxes and income taxes. We've worked to reduce regulations. We just passed a massive regulatory reform bill that passed the House and the Senate. There's still going to be some work on that to try to spur job creation in the state. But in terms of even working with the administration, you don't have to be essentially a rubber stamp, but at the same time, you find common ground where you can work together. So we're close to the Port of Charleston here right now in the Senate this year, and we expect through the conference committee right now, we're hoping to get it finalized. I passed an amendment unanimously with Republican and Democratic support, working with the White House to strengthen Homeland Security and State Law Enforcement Division funding and cooperation to protect the port against a potential asymmetrical threat or attack from a state actor or a drone attack against our port's infrastructure. I think that's something that I proved I could work with the White House on. I've met with the administration on it. We passed it in the Senate 40-0, and I'm expecting the House is going to get it done. So my attitude is you got to work with everybody you can to get something done, and 80%, my friend, is not 20% my enemy. That's always been my approach. That's what I would do in any job I ever hold in South Carolina politics, because you've got to move the ball down the field.
This is for Mr. Webster. South Carolina's abortion access law is known as the 6-week abortion ban. Do you think the law is adequate in its current state, is too restrictive, or should be made even more restricted in terms of a total ban in South Carolina?
Yeah, let me start with Senate Bill 1095. Senate Bill 1095 is an insult to women in this state and an embarrassment to the state of South Carolina. I have 3 daughters. 2 of them have the BRCA1 cancer gene. They have a 90% chance of developing breast or ovarian cancer in their lifetime. Based on the wording of this bill, which is sloppy, my daughters cannot correct their condition in this state. They can't come home because of Senate Bill 1095. The governor can only enforce the law that we inherit. The current 6-week abortion bill, when I am governor, is going to be there when I get there. But if any bill comes to my desk that is 1 minute more restrictive than that bill, I will veto it as quickly as I can.
Representative Johnson?
I personally think that too many of us up here who are male have too much influence over what's happening with women's bodies. And that's why I introduced the bill called the Joint Committee on Women's Reproductive Rights. And that would have Republican women and Democrat women come together to discover whatever the foundation is for women's reproductive rights to decide what works best for them. And then they would introduce this bill to the General Assembly, and then fathers would then add in the amendments to, that affect men and males and fathers. I think women have to be the driving force behind this legislation, because I've got 4 children of my own. And ever since I've been watching my children be born and being nervous, but never once did I feel like I would die based on my wife giving birth. But my wife felt like she might lose her life based on her giving birth. And that's why the foundation of women's reproductive rights must come from women, because their lives literally depend on it. And I think it's about time we start being radical enough to believe that women are smart enough to do what they want to do with their own bodies.
Senator Kimbrell?
Well, this is an issue I've had to deal with in the Senate since I got there in 2020, and I beat a Democratic incumbent who'd been in office 30 years. And one of the things that I was happy to work on early was the heartbeat bill. Now, let me be clear about where I stand on this. I support protecting human life, that we do not use abortion as a means of essentially birth control. That being said, I also don't support this idea that we would never allow any exceptions. I've never supported the extremes on this. You've got two extremes, and I'll give you two examples. Look at former Virginia Governor Northam, who said that if a baby was essentially destined for abortion, they would let the baby die on the delivery room table because that's their pro-choice position. That's radical. That's insane. On the flip side, there are folks, and look, even in my own party, I'll be the first to say, who want to go so far as to put a woman in jail or even put her possibility of the death penalty for having an abortion under any circumstances. I don't support that. But when I did come to the Senate, we had a 20-week abortion law in this state because of the Supreme Court in South Carolina striking down our prior heartbeat bill. I fought to get it in place with reasonable exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother. We stopped busing people in from places like Florida to have abortions at Planned Parenthood clinics here. I stand by that. I do not want to be an abortion destination, but I'm also never going to support or sign a law that would put mom in jail or on death row for an abortion. We can do this in a way that we enhance and strengthen a culture of life while also having reasonable accommodations and a reasonable debate.
Congressman Norman.
Yeah, I'm different from everybody up here. Look, I've got 17 grandchildren. Abortion is not health care. It's just not. And I've been very public about this. I'll sign anything that saves the life of a child. And, you know, I've been in hearings in Washington, D.C. with groups that will kill a child, a perfectly healthy child at birth, and anything that will help keep alive a child that is in the womb, that is perfectly healthy. And there are always exceptions that you have. But you got to remember, to get it through the courts now, like you're talking about putting somebody in jail. I had a group that came to me the other day, and they had an example of a lady who had abortions time after time after time and was making a lot of money on it because of the way our laws are structured. That lady should have consequences on that. So no, anything that's more stricter, I will sign as governor and let it work its way through the House and Senate. You know, the heartbeat bill is fine, but is it strict enough? I just don't think you kill a child. And we had a senator, a congressman who went through the different abortions and asked the lady, which one do you like the best? So bottom line, I will sign anything that's stricter that will save the life of a child.
This is for Representative Johnson. It's easy to be upset and angry at the Department of Transportation. What specifically do you have as a problem with the way the DOT is being run now, and what unique ideas do you have that you could throw into the arena to make traffic, roads, transportation better in the state?
Well, the first thing we need to figure out is where is our money going? Because we're being taxed over and over and over again. Our vehicles being taxed, we're just being taxed for our infrastructure, but yet we are not seeing too much progress on the repairs of our roads. So I want to see where our money is going, and the only way you do that is by doing a full-on audit. A full-on audit to see where our money is going, how much are we paying for certain things, what are we doing. We also have to discover who are these 5 companies that control the infrastructure repairs of all of our roads. There are only 5 companies in the state that control all of that. We have to make sure that we expand competition in the state. We've got to attract more contractors in the state so that we can have individuals who can actually do the work here in South Carolina. And I want to make sure that our money is going to responsible contractors, because we can't just have people here who are saying it's going to cost us $500 million for whatever. We need to come up with more ideas, and that comes with forward-thinking ideas like high-speed transit. We can talk about high-speed transit in this state. Can you imagine somebody who could leave from Columbia to go to work in Charleston and then be back home by 6 o'clock? Or somebody who wants to leave in Columbia and go to Greenville and get a job or something like that. So we need to make sure that we're exhausting all of our options and making sure that our money is being spent responsibly in this state.
Senator Kimbrell, is he spot on with what he's saying?
Well, I appreciate that he's essentially endorsing the plan I was about to lay out on deregulation for the 5 companies. I don't agree on the high-speed rail. I mean, look at California. They've spent $1 billion for something that doesn't even run from San Francisco to Los Angeles yet. So $1 billion to go a long ways toward paving 85 and 26 and 95. But we do need, I worked this year in the Senate on Senate Bill 801. We ended up getting a compromise on this that starts to modernize the DOT. That's needed and necessary. I was one of the co-sponsors of that bill, that we would basically decouple ourselves from the federal government when it comes to the permitting process. One of the biggest issues isn't that we don't have enough money going to SCDOT, it's the time it takes to get a project approved. And if you wait on the Federal Highway Transportation Committee or you wait on the US DOT, you might be here till Jesus comes back. So the idea is we're gonna allow permitting to happen here on our own, decouple from the federal government and expedite it. Now, I appreciate Representative Johnson endorsing what I've got to say, because there are 5 companies that largely control it right now. I have said that as governor, I'd fight really hard to make it easier to get people bonded and insured to be a competitor, to go and bid on these projects. The reality is North Carolina and Georgia are bigger states by population. They get a lot more of those contractors faster than we can. And so we're fighting constantly to spend the money we do have. There's hundreds of millions sitting in the Department of Transportation Trust Fund right now, the escrow account, to pay for jobs and projects. We need more people doing the paving, more people fixing the potholes. We need to deregulate, modernize, and then decouple from the federal government. That is the way to improve roads and bridges and infrastructure.
Congressman Norman.
I'm the only one on this stage and in this race that's built roads. I've built bridges. It is insane that we have got the deadliest secondary roads in the country. Roads have never taken a priority, and it's kind of like water and air. Everyone uses our roads. It should be a top priority. Here's what I will do. We spend $24,000 per road mile. We've got about 40,000 miles of roads that we maintain. Bottom line, it takes way too long to get an answer out of Columbia. We're going to decentralize that. We're going to make sure that competitive bids are in place. But it's kind of like Jermaine said, you got to know where your money is. I will do a forensic audit of every agency in the government, and I will send people in that know exactly what they do and what they're looking at, and separate the bureaucracy from asphalt, subgrade, stone. That's just not being done now. Accountability has to be in place. My lieutenant governor, he or she will be a road czar, and they're going to be experts on it. I've had more people who have wanted to come to work with me who have nothing to gain the system from. They built roads. They know it. They've been successful in their companies. I will bring these kind of people in line with me to get something that's has been delayed way too long. We've got enough money. We will find it. And we'll be a drastic improvement over our secondary roads and our unsafe bridges.
We've had 1 million people move to South Carolina in the last 15 years. We got 1 million more coming in the next 10. We are simply not ready. It's all of our infrastructure that's not ready. It's roads, it's bridges, it's water systems, it's sewer systems. We don't have enough money, and here's why. When the gas tax was passed in 2017, not my tax, that was a Republican tax, McMaster's tax. And don't blame this on a Democrat. We did not index that tax to inflation. Over the ensuing 10 years, a penny of road paves 30% less road than it did 10 years ago. Every road project in this state is between 30 and 130% over budget. The combination of those two things is we're raising less than half as much money on our gas tax today than we were when it was passed. So we don't have enough money, and there are some ways to fix that. First is we got to index the gas tax to inflation. The second thing we have to do, if you've driven to Atlanta or you've driven across Lake Norman, you know what fast lanes look like. The Peach Pass in Georgia, private contractors can build the third lane at expense to them, not us, and they're able to recompense their cost by the tolls that they collect. But that is billions of dollars that we can save. Look, when you drive from Georgia into South Carolina on I-95, you come to a complete stop because you go from 3 lanes to 2 lanes. The third thing we have to do is, as the others have said, Department of Transportation needs to look like the conservation bank, decouple it from procurement, but still have oversight. So it's money and regulations. Sorry about that.
Let me go back in time. What do the Republicans on stage think about this indexing the gas tax to inflation? I mean, our gas tax has increased just based on years if the legislature can do it as opposed to a trigger.
No, I disagree with Billy. We do have the money. Now, the money that's going to, as an example, some of these industries coming in here, Scout Motors, when you give $1.3 billion, that's wrong. And we're going to have over another $1 million that's coming into South Carolina. I see it. Where do you think people from New York are coming? South Carolina. Virginia, they've elected a lunatic governor there. Coming to South Carolina, California. I'll look at indexing the gas tax, but that's not the answer. We've got the money. It's prioritization, and I will prioritize roads and bridges. And once we find out what's needed, if the money is going in where it should be, we'll find the money in it. And so before I tax the citizens of this state with every other tax that they have, electricity being one of them, folks, you're going to have to buckle your belt on the increases in electricity.
That's okay.
So I would not support indexing it, because here's the reality. We have, even while we've cut taxes, $2 billion in income tax relief over the past 3 years, another $627 billion in combined cuts in the Senate we passed alone this year. We still put $300 million more this year alone into DOT. It's, again, how fast we're going to be able to spend it. Modernizing the spending. And to Mr. Webster's point there, Senate 801 that I talked about earlier, I ran out of time, we actually are doing what you described, which is allowing private contractors to build those third lanes. You don't have to take that lane, but if you let a private contractor come in and do it, we're not spending any more money. We don't have to raise your taxes, make life more expensive. But I promise you, if it's 85 or 26 and I can buy a Palmetto pass to do it, I'm going to buy the pass. And even those that don't want to buy the pass will benefit from people who are impatient like me who will. Right, it's the right way to do it without raising taxes.
Thank you. This goes back to Senator Kimbrell. Our fourth question is always our AARP South Carolina question. It's just been a tradition. The state is getting ready to just expand by 1 million people, by what you said. And a lot of that are senior citizens moving in and our population aging up. What ideas do you have that the state is not doing now that should be doing to prepare for an aging population taking over the state?
Well, I mean, first off, we do know that absolutely a lot of the growth in South Carolina, particularly in the coast on the upstate, are retirees and folks that are moving here over the age of 55. One thing we did this year, and I was one of the original sponsors of the bill, was to increase the homestead exemption, to make it to where you don't have to worry about losing your house for not paying a property tax bill. Right now, historically, it's been $50,000. So the first $50,000 of the value of your house was exempted from a property tax bill. Under the bill we passed this year was $150,000. And you have to be over 65 and be here for about 5 years to qualify, so we don't just get flooded on day one. But there's a 5-year waiting period, but $150,000 versus $50,000. I worked with Senator Peeler on that to make sure that it happened. Now, respectfully, the House took it out of their budget, or the bill that they sent us. We put it back in unanimously. All senators, all 46 of us, put it back on, sent it back to the House. I'm determined to make sure retirees do not lose their house because of a property tax increase. Another thing I was very proud of this past week, particularly for our military retirees, we are now the #1 state in the country, according to Wallet Hub, for military retirement. And part of that is 2 years ago, we passed an exemption of the state income tax of all of your retirement benefits as a military member. So if you get a pension as a military retiree, that's being phased in, but eventually any retirement you get that's paid for as a part of your package is exempted from all state income taxes. So we've got to make life more affordable for seniors. I want to make it more attractive, particularly for our military veterans, and I think we've done a lot of that the last several years. I'll continue it in the years ahead.
Congressman Norman.
What we failed on is, as we attract the 1 million people that has been mentioned, and I think it's going to be a lot more than that, this unlimited growth and giving this state away is not right. I don't know how you're going to move in Charleston at all. Myrtle Beach the same way. 26 and 526 is 11 hours that you spend in traffic. And folks, I'm going to put, it's going to take me a long time to let a company come in this area that just say they're providing jobs. Because as Billy said, we don't have the infrastructure. Our power grid is not up to speed. All of our infrastructure rates a D or worse, as graded by the national, any of the national grades that they have. South Carolina's at the bottom. We can't do that. Everybody uses it, but we got to control the growth. We got to make it attractive. I'm gonna cut your taxes, and the homestead exemption is an easy one. But for the seniors, they're getting crowded out. For the military veterans, it's still not good enough. We're going to have to take a long look at that. But before we do that, it's going to have to be an accounting of every agency to see where government is working and where government is not working, particularly with spending.
Mr. Webster.
Yeah, Ralph and Josh have done a good job covering the tax situation for seniors and vets. There's an interesting thing that's going on in South Carolina that gives me tremendous hope for our future. The future depends on what I call, the big word for conservation is this concurrency. It's just good sense. In the 8 counties that are the most populous counties for seniors, we have passed local option sales taxes that are directly responsive to the needs that those counties have. Infrastructure, conservation, affordable housing, and education. Seniors are voting for those taxes because they understand, like everybody understands, schools are important, good roads are important, the beautiful places in this state are important, and the only way we can envision a future is we've got to have infrastructure, development, and conservation plans that go statewide. They have to be overlaid on each other such that the sum is greater, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We have not done that, but seniors drive these local option sales tax increases because they know better than anybody what great quality of life looks like in their communities.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you. We're talking about making life better for our aging population, our seniors, and that has to start with Medicaid expansion. And for the simple fact that, we will allow our seniors and our population, our aging population, to get at least 500,000 more South Carolinians access to health care. That is something that we have to talk about. We have to address that issue. And with all due respect to my 2 Republican colleagues over here who are on my left, these individuals have a supermajority in the House, a supermajority in the Senate. They control the federal government. Everything that they are saying that they want to do or will do, why has it not been done already? They have all of the power to do this. Homestead exemption could have been passed years ago. These things could have been done years ago. So excuse me in the fact that I'm just trying to figure out when is this change going to happen and how is it all of a sudden going to happen in November when this thing could have been done already. We are losing lives, and we have to make sure that we are taking care of our aging population, and we can do that by expanding Medicaid.
All right, we've gone around, starting again with Congressman Norman. Several people in this race have said that South Carolina should flat out not allow any more data centers in the state. The Pew Center says so far there are 43 in the state that are operating now or planned. What is your position on the continuation now of data centers which represent the future at a price of electricity and water?
Data centers do represent the future, but it uses a lot of water and uses a lot of electricity we don't have. I don't believe in government mandating that you can't have a data center. This is where and I have a staffer who's built a great home, a data center went up, and they're upset about it, as they should be. But I do think that this is where you call on the local, each city and county to take ownership in what's permitted and what's not permitted. And if a private property owner who owns his land wants to sell it to a data center, that's his right. But I think each city and town ought to take ownership in it. And if they don't want it, put things in place, go to the people. I will be an advocate, and I will use my voice, which has not been used recently, to point out the drawbacks on data centers. I think they're a problem. It is the wave of the future, maybe, but the way it's going now, South Carolina's not ready for it, like so many things. They're just not ready for it.
Mr. Webster.
I think every candidate in this race on both sides has either called for a moratorium on data centers or an outright prohibition for some period of time. There is so much about data centers that we don't know, and the technology is evolving just about as fast as artificial intelligence is evolving. As Ralph said, there are water issues, there are power issues, there are heat bloom issues, there are bird migration pattern issues. The unintended consequences of data centers is profound. What I object to, even more than that, is the process by which these data centers are locating themselves in our communities. I was in Marion County. The data center there, we read the 61-page prospectus. Almost nothing in it was true. They had a captive LLC that had nothing to do with the purchaser. County council was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so they couldn't talk about the data center with their constituents. And the bill went through third reading in the middle of the night when a snowstorm, the first one in 17 years or some long period of time in Marion, was forecasted. The transparency around data centers is just completely lacking. And when whatever we do during these moratorium periods around learning more about data centers has got to be a robust process, because as Ralph said, I mean, at some point we've got to supply power to the folks that live here. And so we've got a lot of work to do before we locate data centers in South Carolina.
Representative Johnson.
This year, I introduced a joint resolution in the State House to halt the construction or the issuances of any permits for the construction of any data centers in South Carolina. I mean business about this stuff, and I've also coined the phrase BYOE. If you come to South Carolina, bring your own energy. You cannot come here and use our energy. You cannot come here and use our resources. You will have to produce your own. If you want to come do business with us, I expect you to bring your own resources to do business here in South Carolina, because it's not fair to the residents of South Carolina to have their power bills raised, to have their water tainted, and their quality of life disrupted because you want to come here and take advantage of what we have to offer here. So I will stand against any of that type of stuff. I think it needs to go in front of the General Assembly, and I think we need to put guardrails in place that strictly puts out and outlines exactly what we will allow here, and I will make sure that I will veto anything that comes to my desk that does not have South Carolinians protected first.
Senator Kimball.
Well, this year, I'm going to be a little bit of a different position everybody else is taking here. I actually don't support a total moratorium. I just think it has to be done intelligently. Let me say why. Everybody in this room has a cell phone on you, right? Half of y'all are on them right now. And those are run on data centers. And I found that a lot of the protests we've seen against data centers are done on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or X. There's a certain irony to protesting a data center using stuff from a data center. I'd rather have, I know there's one in Berkeley, I'd rather have our data controlled in Berkeley than Beijing. I'd rather the devices and the apps your kids use run through a data center in Berkeley than Beijing. It is a national security issue. That being said, I've introduced and worked with Senator Davis of Beaufort on legislation that would provide those guardrails that have been referred to up here tonight. Nobody needs to have their power utility rates increased. We're not going to allow the water to be destroyed. In fact, the bill that we put forward said we'll put guidelines in place with the Department of Environmental Services to ensure the economic impact is mitigated, that utilities do not go up in cost. In fact, in Spartanburg, we're working right now with a company trying to move in that's going to bring behind the grid energy production that would power these things without them having to go on the mainframe grid. It's a knee-jerk reaction because it's politically popular to say we're going to ban them. I'd rather have them in the United States than in China. And I want to do it in a way that doesn't destroy our communities. At the end of the day, we talk about overcrowding. There are data centers that have come to this state generate anywhere between 30 million to 70 million in property tax revenue and employ about 100 people versus 4,000. You want to fund your roads without doing that? That's the way you could do it.
Senator, that's time. Thank you. And this is going to be our question 6 now. It goes to Mr. Webster. Several of you have advocated eliminating the state's income tax, citing the state's growth is just going to make that economically feasible, even though that's not guaranteed in all economic periods. If you support that, tell me the math on how that gets done. If you're concerned about it, tell me what you see part of state government suffering as a result.
There is no math that justifies cutting the state income tax. Our budget in South Carolina is around about $15 billion. The state income tax is about a third of that. You can do, and I know there's step downs and there's all kind of guardrails around how this steps down. In no fashion does this work. If you care about anything, child care, health care, conservation, infrastructure, hot breakfast for kids, cutting the state income tax kills it. I had a great Republican business partner who said you can't cut your way to prosperity. It's the damn truth. If you cut the state income tax, you're going to lose 1/3 of this state's budget over time. You can't grow your way out of this problem. It's a talking point because, as Dr. Johnson said a minute ago, the Republicans have had a supermajority for a handful of years and controlled the legislature for 20. If this was such a good idea, why didn't anybody do this over the last 2 decades? I know we've cut the income tax some, and I like returning money to the citizens of this state when it's possible. Our budget will not withstand what's coming at it. We're mortgaging our future for no reason. Every business, Ralph, yours too, you invest in your competitive advantage. That's our kids and the beauty of our state, and we're getting ready to mess it up.
Representative Johnson.
I have to concur with Mr. Webster down there. You know, it's impossible for us to get rid of income tax. And I've spent hours with our policy writers discussing this issue because I truly wanted to figure out if we could cut income tax and get rid of it. And because it is, between 1/3 and 1/2 of our state's budget, we cannot cut the income tax all the way down. And I'm gonna take this moment just to tell us the truth out here. The truth is, when they just passed this recent tax bill where they brought it from 6% down to 5.1%, did you know they just raised the taxes on the poor and middle class? They took it from, because 40% of South Carolinians already were not paying taxes. It went from 0% to 1.99%. Those people who are in this state right now, they don't even realize that their taxes have been raised, and they won't realize it until January or February of next year when they begin to file their taxes, and they don't see a refund as big as it was before. That is what's happening in this state. They have raised taxes on the poor class, and they cannot afford to live here. That's why we see our younger people leaving this state in droves to go look for more affordability, look for more opportunity. We cannot get rid of income tax. My plan would be to repeal what they have passed, bring it back to what we had, and expand that 40% up to 70% of people in South Carolina not paying income tax, not doing what they did, which is raise taxes on the poor and middle class.
Senator Kimbrough.
Well, for starters, I don't see all these young people just flocking to get out of South Carolina. I see an awful lot flocking in with everybody else. But the reality is, the 3 most successful economies of all 50 states are Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. All 3 of those have no income tax. So I always love the sky is falling rhetoric about getting rid of the income tax. Those 3 states are booming economically. Florida runs a huge surplus every year. Texas runs a huge surplus every year. Tennessee runs a huge surplus every year. In South Carolina, I did in 2022 introduced a bill as the first person in the Republican side to do it. We introduced a bill that would get to 0. The way you do it is you close the loopholes on the sales tax exemptions. And that sales tax generates more income. It's actually not just revenue neutral, it'd be revenue positive if you get rid of the loopholes. Right now, if you play golf, how many of y'all try to play golf in this audience? All right, I try. If you go to a private course versus a public course, you may or may not pay sales tax. If you go to a barber shop versus a different person that cuts your hair, whatever they call that, one of those 2 don't pay income taxes or sales taxes. You've got so many loopholes, even the Department of Revenue can't keep up with it. Just close the loopholes. We have 14, 15 million people a year coming to South Carolina as tourists. Close the loopholes, collect the sales tax, stop with this hodgepodge of it. We will more than cover the deficit that would be created by eliminating the income tax. And you're going to have a booming economy like Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. And you can also get rid of all these targeted tax incentives. The reason we have to pay people to come here is because the taxes are too high.
Right.
You get rid of the income taxes, you can save that money.
Excuse me, sorry. Congressman Norman.
It is irresponsible for anybody running for governor, or to be honest with you, any other office, to all of a sudden say, we're going to cut your income, eliminate the income tax the first 100 days. Until you know what's going to be cut. That's where I mentioned the forensic audit. You have to have that in a business or in running a school. You got to know if you're going to cut your income tax, you got to figure out what's going to be cut. I've served in Congress when anything is cut. You get a phone call from that group. Every dollar spent has got an advocate for it, and the politicians do not have the courage to say no. So to just say that around election time, it's not fair to you. And you want me to tell you the most unfair tax that I've seen in South Carolina? Your electricity bill. They advertise that your per kilowatt is the cheapest in the Southeast. No, it's not. If you buy your power from Dominion, you're getting ready to see a lot of rate increases. Do you know what this public-private partnership, the debt that it has? It's $9 billion. When it came to my desk in Washington, and all the other congressmen signed it, to give all these subsidies away, I said, no, I'm not signing it. And folks, like Jermaine says, your everyday South Carolinian can't build a nuclear sub to produce the power. It's the most unfair tax that there is.
This is for Representative Johnson. One of the more visible duties that Governor McMaster has been aligned with in recent months has been the restart and the death penalty in South Carolina. What is your moral position on the death penalty, and what is your political position on the death penalty?
So I've got both here. I understand, being a Christian, I'm a deacon in my church. I understand that all life is valuable. But when I think about people like Dylan Roof, and why we are still using tax dollars to keep him in a cell and to feed him 3 square meals a day, I don't understand. So I would take this matter extremely serious. It would be a case-by-case situation. When it comes to extremities like that one, I would absolutely support the death penalty, and I actually would not apologize about it, because 9 innocent people who were praying to their God, our God, were there innocently and welcomed him in as a brother and prayed with him, had Bible study with him, and he viciously murdered them all in cold blood. This is a case-by-case situation that you must take serious, because when you pull that lever to take somebody's life, this is not a life you can get back. Because we have to look at situations like George Steiner here in South Carolina, 14 years old, who was given the death penalty, who was an innocent young boy who we took his life, and we knew we got it wrong. You have to make sure it's right, and it would be a case-by-case scenario.
Senator Kimbrough.
You know, this is where historically you have 2 extreme positions. One is abolish it completely, one is hang 'em high. My position is similar to what you just said there in terms of a case by case. There are heinous acts of violence, terrorism. I think about the 9/11 hijackers. I think about the Emanuel 9 shooting. Those kind of people, I have absolutely no problem applying the death penalty in that case. I did write a letter, I think it was 3 years ago, in the execution of Russell Moore in South Carolina, calling for clemency. The reason is Russell Moore was involved in a shootout at a gas station in Spartanburg. He didn't go in there armed, but he wasn't a wealthy guy, and it was at a time where people were running for office and there was politics involved. He was given the death penalty when more heinous crimes like Susan Smith drowning her kids or other people killing their kids weren't given the death penalty. I believe it has to be case by case. We need to be sure that it is a system to where it's equally applied. I do agree with the death penalty in the most heinous criminal situations where people have just been murdered in cold blood. But I also believe it needs to be economically fair. We shouldn't just make it to where if you can afford a high-powered attorney, you may avoid the death penalty, where if you're on a public defender, you're not. So I have said I would have supported, in the case of Russell Moore, for example, back in 2023, I believe it was, I would have supported commutation of that execution. At the same time, there are other people I would absolutely allow the execution to go forward. It's got to be thoughtful. It's got to be done with compassion for the victims and understanding of the circumstances and situation.
Congressman Norman.
I support fully the death penalty. End of story.
Mr. Webster.
The governor occupies a unique space in the evaluation of the appropriate application of the death penalty. Our governor gets to evaluate due process, racial motivation, DNA evidence, and then decide, as we've all recognized on a case-by-case basis, whether the death penalty is appropriate. I changed my position on the death penalty on 9/11. I was in a taxi. I landed in D.C. from Charlotte at 9:03, and I got in a cab, and I was going to meet some friends in downtown Washington. I was right in front of the Pentagon when I watched the plane crash into the West Portico and kill 166 people. That was the closest I had ever been to a terrorist attack, the closest I had ever been to cold-blooded murder, premeditated. And on that day, in that moment, I began to evaluate what I thought was an appropriate remedy for that. And I am in favor of the death penalty with all of the protections that a governor has at his disposal, which I said, due process, DNA evidence, racial motivation. And so I'm a in that case, I'm a supporter of the death penalty.
All right, Senator Kimbrell, from your experience, what do you see as South Carolina's easiest 2 or 3 problems to fix? There's got to be something out there that's just being neglected that you've seen that you want to kick over. What would be the 2 or 3 easiest fixes that you see out there that aren't being done?
Well, one is just restructuring the way these state agencies work. I mean, right now we have a dysfunctional bureaucracy. And that's one of the reasons I worked on regulatory reform this year. If you think about it, y'all vote for people to be in the state house or the state senate, you vote for governor, for Congress, and you assume those are the people making your day-to-day decisions. Oftentimes it's not. It's some bureaucrat in a cubicle someplace, and there's almost no accountability. South Carolina has 5,500 regulations on the books, which results in 20,000 rules that govern your life. From everything from if you put in a swimming pool or you open a bakery. And we've got to reduce those regulations. I believe that's something we could do as a fairly easy lift. We also just need good leadership to get the House and the Senate on the same page. There's 2 extremes, and that's one thing I've said throughout this campaign. You've had governors in the past that were going to go steamroll the legislature. I think of something I worked for one of them. The idea just go in and roll over them. We're going to get them to do exactly what we want. It's a legislatively dominant state. That won't happen. Then there's also the approach now, which is more, send me a bill and I may sign it. You've got to quarterback it. You've got to have somebody who's going to call the plays and get the House and the Senate to work together, because right now, I'll tell you, the House has its agenda, the Senate has its, and the governor says, all right, send us something, we'll get there. We can do better by having a team captain who's going to call those plays to make the government work more efficiently, more effectively, and let's reduce the size and scope of government and bureaucracy.
Representative Norman, I saw you chuckle at that question. What came to mind?
The premise of the question was, what's going to be easy? Nothing. Nothing is going to be easy. I mean, look at where we are. And you know, Jermaine mentioned, you know, you have predominantly Republican House and Senate. You got 89 Republicans and you got 35 Democrats. The same way in the Senate. It's got a supermajority. What do we see for it? And you know, I've had it with candidates who are promising all these things and are giving all these sugar reports. It's going to take some time. Now, as governor, I will use the veto. I will use the line item veto, but more importantly, to sell the things I'm talking about, like prioritizing our roads and bridges, like getting our utility grid up and running and not taxing each one of you, like putting a term limit bill up to get some of these idiots out of office that live on government. Folks, I'm going to sell it to we the people. I will go to every community on all of these things and say, look, here's who is supporting it, and I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I know how it works in the General Assembly. Deals are cut. You know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It ain't gonna happen with Ralph Norman. I don't owe anybody up here, and the state can do better than we've done to be where we are on the main functions. And we've talked about a lot of them here, Schuyler. You know, roads, bridges. But our judicial system, you think that's going to be easy for me to get when you got trial lawyers picking our judges? No, but we're going to deal with it.
That's time, Congressman.
So I'll start kind of where Ralph ended up, which is nothing is easy that gets to this point legislatively to the governor. But the most important thing that we can do, knowing that it's going to be hard, is to expand Medicaid. There is no public policy issue that will have a greater impact on our state than expansion of Medicaid. We're one of 10 states that hasn't done it. We have 500,000 uninsured South Carolinians. Because the Affordable Care Act subsidies are slowly rolling off, that number's going nowhere but up. So there's the human cost of those 500,000 uninsured people, but they get health care. They go to the hospital. And that's the most expensive place to deliver health care other than jail, which is folks that have mental health and behavioral health problems. That's where they go. The reason all of our health insurance premiums are going up, everybody in this room that has private insurance, your premiums are going up because we don't cover those 500,000 people. That cost gets shifted to us. Rural hospitals are closing because we don't have Medicaid for 500,000 people. In every state that has done this, crime has gone down, medical debt for families has gone down, coverage for veterans has gone up, maternal health has gotten better, infant mortality's gotten better. This has to happen. It's wrong that it hadn't happened so far.
This is for Congressman Norman. I'm sorry, I'm looping around. It's for Representative Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. My apologies.
So two of the easiest problems that we can get to is, one, we're one of 2 states that does not have a hate crimes bill here in this state. We must pass a hate crimes law here. We're constantly at the bottom of things that we should be at the top of, and the top of things that we should be at the bottom of. We can get that passed. There are only 1 or 2 senators that are standing in between us having a hate crimes law, and it's still sitting in committee over and over and over again. The House of Representatives, we have passed that bill twice. Now we've got municipalities all around this state that are passing it on their own, passing hate crimes ordinances because we in the General Assembly have failed to act. I think it's about time we get that bill passed. Another thing we can get done is we can just put more money in the budget to pay our teachers. How come our teachers are still suffering? Our teachers should not be having to deal with using money out of their own pockets to buy supplies and figure out how they're going to take care of these children who are coming to school who have not eaten that on that day. We can pay our teachers more, and we can pass a hate crimes law.
Congressman Norman, the Republicans in the State House have tried to launch their own kind of DOGE commission. What do you see, can you pinpoint, instead of being generic, tell me what is waste and fraud and abuse that you see in state government? And if you had to, what percentage of the state's workforce would you want to see cut to reach taxpayer efficiency?
What I consider waste, fraud, and abuse, the giveaway of $1.3 billion to a company that comes into this state under the guise of creating jobs. What do I see as a waste, fraud, and abuse? The $1 billion that the budget found last year, didn't know where it went, spent it. That's abuse. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you the workforce has to be cut X percent. I don't know. The problem we had in Congress, we had a DOGE commission that identified all the millions of dollars going to build walls in Libya. We had money being siphoned off at every different level, and it's Republican and Democrat. You know where we lacked, when we had all the reports, we could only come up with $9 billion of cuts. I could take all these things to each one of you, and you'd say, this is ridiculous. This is not what America was built on, nor the taxpayers need to bear the brunt of where the waste, fraud, and abuse is going. I will find out real quickly. And we will put it out to every citizen in this state, and I will make the case for why I think the money that's in my mind is considered waste, fraud, and abuse. Take it to y'all and get a consensus on it. But in Congress, you can't cut anything. All they can do is spend your money, and that's both sides. It's ridiculous. It's not going to happen under the Norman administration in South Carolina.
Mr. Webster.
I've never paid attention to a single election in my life where people didn't talk about fraud, waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, it's been, when I was in the Clinton administration, we had something called Reinventing Government, which was supposed to get at waste, fraud, and abuse across every cabinet agency. It's been part of every election that I've paid attention to since then. But Ralph is exactly right. This is an analysis, agency by agency, case by case. There's plenty of stuff going on that shouldn't be. You mentioned the selection of judges. The fact that we let legislators pick our judges or the ones that are eligible is just nuts. It's the fox guarding the hen house. My wife and I got a bunch of chickens, and they get killed by foxes. And, that's just something we shouldn't let folks do. Ralph's also, I'm agreeing with you way too much, Ralph. I'm sorry. I'm going to turn you into a conservative Democrat here. The biggest money is, in fact, in what we have given to companies to move here. Scout is one example. I went to a Japanese battery manufacturer outside of Florence, which is $1 billion in the ground. It's been there for 2 years, and the place hadn't opened. We're giving away huge chunks of our revenue base to attract companies here who most of them are going to come anyway. And a quick thing, we need to be attracting research and development and corporate headquarters and not so much branch manufacturing. Not opposed to it, but we got to do all of that if we're going to grow our economy.
Representative Johnson.
So if y'all have tuned in, not this past budget, but the budget before that, I stood up at the well for over 3 hours by myself reading off the different programs that the Republican supermajority cut funds to. because they talk about waste and fraud and all these things like that, but their definition is a little bit different than mine, because these individuals, they have lots of pet projects all over this state. Lots of things that cost $10 million for a private, non-civilian vacation getaway. They gave $250 million to Clemson University to build a veterinary school and put a certain senator's name on the building. They've done all different types of pet projects all around this state where they've been using those funds for their own personal needs and aspirations. The waste and the fraud didn't come from sickle cell anemia research, which they cut funding to. The waste and the fraud didn't come from the Call Me Mr. program, which they cut funding to. The waste and the fraud did not come from programs like EMS Closet, which they cut funding to, that wants to give resources to young kids in school. They cut funds to the things that we need around this state. That is the problem that we have. The waste and the fraud comes from them being self-serving, trying to do things for their own self and not for the people in South Carolina who need it the most.
Senator Kimbrough.
I believe that the biggest driver of it is, again, the size and scope of agencies. There's three things you've got to do. One is when you have 5,500 regulations, that means you have thousands of employees that got to implement them. And they're going to justify their own existence. I mean, I talked to a fellow senator this week who he and his family were opening a business, and he's a sitting member of the Senate who had 3 or 4 times the same department came out over like molding, okay? That's a waste of taxpayer money. 5,500 regulations need to be reduced. We need to fire and reduce the size and scope of the state workforce. That's one. Number two, and this is the third rail of politics nobody wants to talk about, is the single largest expenditure in the state budget right now is education. And we always are told we just need to spend more on education, more on education. It needs to be reallocated, not just spend more. We spend more money per student than any other state in the southeastern United States to get 46th results. You've got to have more choice, more reform. I have no problem with increasing teacher salaries. We've done that every year for the past 5. But when you have 10 assistant principals at a school with 500 kids, there's a problem. The reason people are coming out of their pockets is because we're allowing a misallocation of resources. There needs to be total reform to the Department of Education and how we're spending money there. Finally, I agree with reducing the targeted tax incentives. The way you do that is to cut the income tax and eliminate it. You're going to lose every economic opportunity to neighboring states that are more competitive if you don't do targeted incentives or reduce taxes. I'd rather not pick winners or losers. Let's bring people here, businesses here, by cutting and eliminating the income tax, not picking winners or losers through incentives.
All right, Mr. Webster, some South Carolina lawmakers want to make it mandatory for all local law enforcement agencies that operate jails or detention centers to enter into cooperation agreements with ICE. Do you support this? And right now it would be an unfunded mandate, but do you support these holding centers and sheriffs becoming extensions of the federal government?
So this is one of those issues where the Democrats got it wrong on the southern border and the Republicans have gotten it wrong in the inner city. I think our state law enforcement should be the arbiter of when and why they need ICE's cooperation. They shouldn't be forced to enter into agreements that are not properly funded, which allows them to come in under circumstances that they dictate that our local law enforcement doesn't. I mean, look, ICE was never controversial before all of this. ICE did what it was supposed to do 5, 6, 7 years ago. It has become highly politicized, highly controversial, and highly provocative in cities where it is not called for. So mandatory agreements, particularly that have no money to go with them, I am opposed to.
Representative Johnson.
ICE in its current form, I would not support forcing our law enforcement to go into agreements with them right now. We know that in its current form, we have seen situations all across this country where American lives have been lost. And I think we need to minimize people's involvement in terms of like their cooperation in terms of like forcing these police departments to have to deal with them. Obviously, we need to work with the federal government, but to see what's been happening in other states around the country is sad. It's something that we need to discuss, and I would not support that in its current form.
Senator Kimbrough.
Absolutely, I'd support it. If you look at what's happened here near North Charleston earlier this year, There was a huge underground operation going with MS-13 gang members that have decided that coming from Los Angeles to here is the right thing to do. Sanctuary city policies don't work in sanctuary cities. The last thing I'd want is sanctuary cities in South Carolina. There is no reason why we would not ask state law enforcement divisions and subdivisions to cooperate with enforcing federal immigration law. The reason South Carolina hasn't had the same kind of drama and riots you've seen in other states is because we're not a sanctuary state. When we talk about lives being lost, they have been lost. More so by illegal immigrants killing and attacking U.S. citizens. So I'm not suggesting we go out there and stop everybody at the stoplight. Nobody's suggesting that. But if you have gang members, MS-13 or Trendaragua, we want those people out of South Carolina. And I believe that not allowing sanctuary cities in this state is the right policy. So I do support cooperating with our state law enforcement with federal immigration enforcement.
Congressman Norman.
What the Biden administration did to open this country up to every other country in this big universe and flood America with any and all, including criminals, was an abomination. We're paying the price for it now. Absolutely, I would support. If you've got to go deal with ICE, and they're doing a good job. Like Billy said, it's been publicized. And no, you have to obey the law on that. Along with that, you put the 287G programs in where police officers can stop illegal aliens when they're doing their job. But it is unbelievable what's the money that that the Biden administration did to America, which is anti-constitutional, and it's just not right. They wanted to create a power base for the Democrat Party. I'm sick of it. And it's taken so much of our resources. I've been with Tom Homan. He is as genuine of a man. He wants to get the criminals out of the country. And that's what he's doing. But no, there should be no sanctuary cities in South Carolina, as there shouldn't be any in this country. But you've got to go along with our law enforcement, which helps them take criminals that's protecting your family and my family.
I'm getting the signal now that we're nearing an end, so this is going to be our last question round, and it's going to go for Representative Johnson. Governor McMaster and several conservation groups have announced and celebrated these sort of state or even private partnerships to preserve land, waterways, territory. What's your view on that continuing, especially when the coast is where the pressure mainly is? What's the solution to find that boundary? It's an open question, but what would be your attitude?
Thanks so much, and I'm going to use part of this response here to respond back to some of the nonsense that we just heard there. Y'all, you cannot look at me and tell me that I'm American or not American. You cannot look at anybody in this room and tell if they're American or not American. The only way you know somebody's American or not American is by harassing. That's how we figured out about stop and frisk and how racist that was. We have to make sure that we are working together collaboratively to solve these problems. The way you can get people to come forth is by incentivizing them to come forward. Anybody in here who has a warrant, these people, they run away, they don't want to be dealt with, they avoid these situations, they avoid confrontation. We have to work together to figure this thing out and support our law enforcement and not put them in danger, which is what we are doing. And that's probably, and I'm gonna go to the question now. So with Governor McMaster and his conservation, that's probably one of the things that me and Governor McMaster see completely eye to eye on. I think we need to go further than what he's been doing. I really appreciate what he's been doing with conservation. I've had plenty of meetings with him to discuss our land conservation and preservation, and I want to do more. I want to do more for that in South Carolina.
Senator Kimball.
Absolutely. I've worked Senator Davis and I this year put together a bill in the Senate. I believe there was concurrent legislation in the House for concurrency. And the concurrency legislation I support makes sure that we do not allow our infrastructure to be outpaced by the growth of folks coming in. I think that's one way to preserve the culture. South Carolina is very unique, not just geographically, but culturally, and those things are related. There's a great relationship between the culture of our state and the geography of our state. And it's not just a coastal problem, it's an upstate problem too. It's an across the state problem. I know in the upstate, in Spartanburg County, where I'm from now, we allowed about 100 houses to go on a road that's a farm road, okay? This was a one-lane little farm road that could barely hold a tractor. They put over 100 houses on this road before ever even thinking about the infrastructure needs. And all you did then was basically have an accident every single morning on the way to school. We need to have concurrency legislation to ensure that we're keeping up with the pace of growth. I have also supported and chaired the subcommittee on the Agriculture Committee to do it, to allow farmland to participate in the Conservation Land Bank Trust. So if you have farmland, instead of selling it to a tract home developer, if you can't afford to keep it just on your own, we're allowing participation in the Conservation Land Bank Trust, that up to 50% of the value of that land could essentially be bought through a trust, through an easement from the state, as long as you continue to use it for an agricultural purpose. This allows generational farms to stay in the family. We've got to be sure we protect the culture of our state by protecting the geography of our state.
Congressman Norman.
Yeah, I mean, conservation is foremost in this state. I agree with it. Now, you cross a boundary when you put the big dollars that, in my mind, this is another case that recently the House and Senate passed where you paid $32 or $36 million to take land at the end of Kiowa Island, Captain Sam Spit. That's an absurd price for you, the taxpayers, to pay when we don't have the basics in place. As I mentioned, roads, bridges, our education, we've got to focus on the major things that we have to get fixed, or we're not doing the citizens of South Carolina justice. We got a beautiful state. We've got to maintain it. The conservation banks are good. A lot of farmers are taking that route, taking the land and taking the tax write-offs. But the problem now, you got a lot of farmers who are about to go bankrupt, and it's not going to help them at this point. But no, the conservation is a top priority, but when you put out the dollars, tax dollars, without using common sense on fixing the basic things, that comes first, particularly with the influx of people that are coming in this area.
Mr. Webster.
You started your question with Governor McMaster, who deserves tremendous credit for being a good steward of our conservation resources in South Carolina. And I would like nothing more than as governor to make sure that he fulfills his legacy. He would like for us to preserve almost 10 million acres in this state. I don't know how we do that, but let's just say it's 7. We've now preserved 3.5. There are 3 things that we must do. I'll go back to one of them. We have to have a concurrency on steroids with infrastructure, conservation, and development. Unless they're all assessed concurrently, we cannot build the proper future. We need to make the State Conservation Bank, which is the most efficient state agency in this state, bigger, better funded, and better staffed. It is detached from our procurement processes, and it is the lever that local land trusts use to get private philanthropy, public-private partnerships, to preserve huge chunks of land and water in this state. The second thing we have to do is reinstitute the documentary stamp fee. We used to have a way to provide resources for conservation through this documentary stamp fee. I've been chairman of the board of the Nature Conservancy for 5 years. My mother was before me. I've been doing this stuff my entire life. I know how to do this, and I can solve some of these conservation issues and figure out how to pay for them.
I think we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank the audience for showing. We're going to go to closing remarks in a minute, but first let me thank the audience, thank South Carolina AARP, and especially thank the candidates for appearing on a stormy night. Appreciate it. We're going to give you 90 seconds, and we're going to go to closing arguments, and we're going to start with Representative Johnson first.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us on here and allowing us to talk about, our visions for what South Carolina is going to look like starting next year. Thanks to my colleagues up here for, joining us up here. I think this is the first time we had this many bipartisan candidates together to discuss our vision. But we have to talk about the simple truth and the simple math of what has been happening in this state. For over 23 years, this state has been ran by a single party. We have seen they have a supermajority in the House, a supermajority in the Senate for the first time in 150 years. They have the governor's mansion. They've got agriculture. They've got education. They've got comptroller general. They've got treasurer. They've got all the congressional districts with the exception of Congressman Clyburn. Every single idea that they have up here, they could have done it already. Why has it not been done already? Why are we still 43rd in education? Why do we have 17 counties without an OBGYN? Why are our roads the worst in the entire country? Why are our bridges the worst in the entire country? Why is our homicide rate higher than California? Why do we have over 600 unsolved murders just since 2020 in this state? Why do we have all these problems, but yet we have individuals running for governor who are saying they're going to do something different? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It's time for something different. I will be that for you. I will be that different type of leader because we have to build a new South Carolina together. Thank you so much.
Senator Kimbrell.
It's always fun when we run for office because everybody has to make it sound like there's a parade of horrors and nothing's positive. And the reality is you have to say the good and the bad. Yeah, there's things that need to be done or we wouldn't be running. I wouldn't be running. But you also have to look at where the positives have been. So I keep hearing tonight, what has the Republican supermajority done? What have they done? Why does Columbia never work? Columbia is corrupt. Yeah, there are some corruption in Columbia. Yeah, there's things that still need to be fixed. I came to office in 2020 and defeated a 30-year Democratic incumbent. And when I came to office, we had 2 other people flip seats from Democrat to Republican and had a functional majority. So since that, in 6 years, I have been able to help lead the fight on reduction of income taxes. We've reduced property taxes. We've reformed education and expanded school choice. We've reduced regulations. I passed, as a freshman member of the Senate, in my first term, I think I'm the only person that's ever done this, passed a constitutional referendum through the House and Senate that y'all passed by 85% to secure elections and ensure that illegal immigrants don't vote in South Carolina elections. I have done more in 6 years than people who served in office for decades have done because I've actually worked with people in the House and the Senate. I've worked with Republicans and Democrats. Yes, more needs to be done. Yes, we have things that need to be solved. But we can't ignore the fact that South Carolina is a better place now than it was even 5 or 6 years ago, and it'll be better still in 4 to 8 years if we pursue the right policies of reducing regulations, reducing taxes, promoting public safety, conserving our environment in a free market way, and ensuring that South Carolina's culture is preserved, and I will do all of that.
Congressman Norman.
I want to thank all the people here at the panel. You know, everybody from running for governor should be here tonight. They just should. Look, I'm running for governor because we've got a generation to protect. We've got South Carolina to protect. When I saw who was running, I said, no, I've got to get involved with this. I cannot have an election where you're marrying a CEO for the next 4 years, but really the next 8 years. And when I hear all these promises of people who have never lifted a finger to implement what they're saying now, it's not Democrat, Republicans. We're all South Carolinians, and all South Carolinians have to live up to what their core beliefs are. And my core beliefs are getting this state back on a firm financial footings and putting the major things in place. I'm just simply not going to stand by and have the flowery talk and then nothing done. And you know, it's such the value that I see right now. We're at a pivotal point because, as Billy and others were saying, we're going to get flooded, folks. If we just give it to everybody coming in, South Carolina will not be the South Carolina that you and I know that we want to leave to our children. And what I've seen going all over the state is every community has a fabric of love of community, love of value. The reason they came to South Carolina is what we have. I'm not going to lose it, and we're going to make some progress when I'm governor.
And Mr. Webster.
Thank you. I've spent my whole life finding common ground, bringing people together to get stuff done. I'm running for governor because I love this state. It's given me everything that I have, and it's made me who I am. But politics is something I don't recognize anymore. It used to be that politics was a contest of ideas, and now it's become a blood sport. There are only losers, no winners. I got into this race, and I made a commitment that I would run my campaign with civility, honesty, and integrity. And I make that commitment again to you tonight. What I also see when I look across this state is an affordability crisis that's crushing middle-class families. I see thousands of families with no health insurance. I see an education system that is inferior. I see infrastructure that's crumbling. And I see our clean water and our beautiful places under assault from unbridled development. When I see those things, I can't sit idly by. These are spaces that I've been in my whole life. I know what to do. I'm running for governor to do those things. I'm not a politician. I've never been one, and I'm a little surprised I'm sitting up here in front of you. But all the companies I've run, all the boards I've been on, and the 2 presidents I've worked for have demanded that I find common ground with people I don't agree with. If you give me your vote, I look forward to building a better South Carolina together.
Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, candidates, and thank you for coming.
Representative, good to see you. Always a pleasure.